This is the No More Wasted Days podcast, and we're your hosts, Sarah Kaufman Bradstreet
and Heather PG. Grab your favorite NA drink and listen as we share vulnerable stories so you never feel alone on your alcohol-free journey.
And gain insights from us as we break down our most used tips and strategies that have kept us alcohol-free.
It's time to break free from wasting any more of your days to the drinking, blackout, hangover cycle.
Welcome to another episode of the No More Wasted Days podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sarah.
And I'm Heather.
All right, we are going to be talking about a really cool topic today, and it's all about thought work. And if you're thinking to yourself, what the heck is thought work? Don't worry, Heather's going to explain it all. But first, how's it going in your life, Heather?
It's going pretty good. My daughter turned 4 yesterday. I turned 44 tomorrow. Dance is coming to a close at the end of the month, so pretty good.
Yeah, everything's winding down, it sounds like. You can get through May.
Yes. How's it going for you, Sarah?
We're still well in like the end of the year hectic craziness because in Oregon, no, I'm not in Oregon anymore. Where do I live now? Because in Washington, in the Pacific Northwest, schools go till mid-June. So it's just kind of like chugging along. I know I grew up in the Midwest and we'd always be done like mid-May. I'm like, oh my gosh, sometimes it feels like a long push here. But so we're busy with track meets for my son, choir concerts for my daughter, choir concerts for me, and then piano for my son. It's just like kind of this craziness of scheduling and hectic stuff. So it's been a ride. But I do have my 5-year alcohol-free anniversary coming up next Monday.
Yes, congratulations ahead of time. I read that at 5 years, folks are considered in long-term recovery.
Oh, I like that because I still feel it's so funny. When I hit a year, I was very much like, oh, I have arrived. I've got this thing down, right?
Hold my sparkling water.
Oh, I've got this. 2 years, I kind of felt the same. I was like, look at me. And then I think 3 years was where I was like, what the heck? And it's been kind of, I don't want people to think, oh my gosh, it's still hard. It's just that I kind of have realized now that the unicorn effect of it has worn off, that the newness of it wears off at some point. And you're kind of like, oh, I want that thing where everything's magical because I took my beer goggles off. I want that always. But it's still, it's still a life beyond my wildest dreams. And it really is all, I always tell myself, it's all due to alcohol, quitting drinking. It really is what changed it all. So I'm excited to chat about that in the next episode. And when I actually cross the line, then I can deliver all the information to everybody.
Yes. So before we hop into unpacking the inner critic, thought work, and an alcohol-free life, I want to invite y'all to the Daymakers Community. Check out the link in the show notes. There are 6 to 8 meetings a month led by me and Sarah. You can do a 7-day trial for $7. It's cheaper than a cheap bottle of wine. And I also offer one-on-one coaching for folks. And I've got some graduates, so to speak. So check out that link in the show notes. Come check it out. Come hang out with us.
Yes, please come hang out with us. We would love to see you there. And you can always, like Heather said, try it out for 7 days. You never know. You might find us and be like, these are my people. And it's okay if you find us and you say, these are not my people. No judgment.
Yeah. You're driving. You get to choose.
Yes. Let's dive into this.
So I want to begin by just kind of unraveling the mysteries of the inner critic. So why does it exist? Well, our inner critic is like an echo of our upbringing. And it's like the voices of our parents, teachers, friends, and society at large. A lot of people ask me that I work with, what's its goal? I'm going to tell you. It molds us into fitting into certain standards, and it shields us from rejection, shame, and abandonment. There's always a catch, right? A lot of times it does more harm than good.
I love that explanation too, that it's what's interesting about the inner critic is that it's the voices of other people. So it's not really like your true self. It really is this conglomeration, if you will, of and usually it seems to be, because it's the critic, all those negative things. And it's not giving you critical advice in a constructive manner most of the time. So And for whatever reason, our brain really does hold on to the crappy stuff people told us. It doesn't like to hang on to the good
Yeah.
stuff. I wish it would, because that would make things, it would make your
Yeah.
inner critic like, look at you, you're the best, you're doing awesome. It would be great if that happened.
Mhm. Yeah. It's like the devil and the angel on the shoulder. My inner critic's name is Jupiter. My positive self, her name is Alice. So it's like Alice and Jupiter. Just carry on.
I like that you've got names for them.
I learned that in life coach training.
I was thinking, I was like, you learned that somewhere. But
Yeah. I mean, I got to name them, of course, but
with your inner critic, you may notice, like when you quit drinking, that it shifts a little bit. And that's something that
yeah.
I always talk to people about, because I always tell people my confidence increased when I quit drinking, which was something I was not expecting. I was expecting to live hangover free. I was expecting to remember everything because I wasn't drinking so much. I was expecting like bloat and inflammation to go away. I wasn't expecting more confidence, but I was always
Mm.
breaking my drinking rules. And then my inner critic was going, why did you drink so much again last night? You were going to only drink 2 drinks and you drank 5. What's your problem? You're such a loser. You've got a drinking problem. Like it was just this voice over and over. And I know you had that too.
I did. Last night I was watching a documentary called Anonymous People. Was recommended to be one of my clients. And I had an aha moment. If the goal of the inner critic is to keep us from shame, rejection, social acceptance, well, isn't it interesting that using alcohol to excess like I did creates shame and rejection, self-abandonment for sure, isolation. So it's an oxymoron.
Yeah. What was the documentary about?
It was based in like 2013. It was about addiction. There was a lot of statistics and some celebrity examples, a lot of education about like AA,
Okay.
and a lot of cool guests on there. I highly recommend that to anybody who's listening.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out. But yeah, it is interesting how alcohol is so good at really tearing us away from society and making us really go inward to the darkest places of ourselves. But it's often
Right.
portrayed as something that's going to help us celebrate, help us have more fun with people. And it does to a point. It's like it does until it doesn't, right?
Right. And there's so much beauty in the darkness, but you can't see that if you're heavy in your use.
Yeah.
That's one of those like rear view mirror.
Oh, yeah. You can't see so much until you take a break.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always telling people just take a break and go into it with a really open mind. Just to be like, I'm going to see what it's like over on this side. And I'm not telling myself I have to quit forever. I just am going to do a little experiment, as Annie Grace calls it with her alcohol free experiment. Like, try it out. Why not?
Yeah. So we all have the voice in our heads. Some of us have a louder one and more persistent. They must be Tauruses, tenacious thoughts. But it's Taurus season, y'all. If you ever like caught yourself berating your own accomplishments or being overly harsh to yourself for the slightest little thing, that's the inner critic. And awareness, just like with booze, is the first step to change.
Mm-hmm.
And like anything, the more you know, the better you are.
Exactly. And it's like, mine is very quiet. I kind of have started to realize that mine's so quiet that I don't notice it, but it's just there, being rude, being a little jerk. Maybe I've just gotten
Yeah.
used to it.
Yeah, that could be true. I did a lot of work. We did like a quote unquote semester of 3 months on thought work. And if y'all want to read more about it, Byron Katie is kind of considered the founder of thought work.
Okay.
I think she has a podcast and I know she has a website. So, or you can work with me and we can dive into it. There's a lot of what I work with my folks on. So it was like, okay, now we have this inner critic. We've got these negative thoughts. So what do we do with them? I want y'all to try this. When you notice your inner critic singing a tune, try to dissect the voice. Whose voice does it resemble? Is it your parent, a teacher, a friend, your spouse? And by identifying the source, you can start to dismantle the power.
I think that's so smart.
Similar like booze.
And sometimes you even find out it's like a past part of you that it's, could be your drinking self. And because I often talk about drinking brain versus sober brain. And that's
Mhm.
part of my thing sometimes. Like, oh, you were so stupid when you were a drinker. And I'm like, not going to engage with that voice right now. But I think a lot of, oh gosh, I'm like, I have so many of these, like where I can go, oh, that one's my mom. That one's this teacher.
Mhm.
Like I had a piano teacher who told me I should never be a music teacher. So I have always felt like I will never be the best musician. And not that you need to be the best musician. You just need to really be in love with music. And, but
Yeah.
just that stuck with me. But it also drove me. Like it also made me be like, yeah, well, F that. I'm going to get a 4.0 in all my music education classes and I'm going to be a kick ass music teacher. And quite frankly, I was. But it's definitely sticks with me.
That made me think about when I was in social work school, I had a professor that said to some budding social workers, like, think retail. And
Mm.
that meant like social work's not for you, think a retail job. That professor
Oh,
never said that to me, but obviously I'm carrying it in some part of me or I wouldn't have thought about it.
because that's the thing too. Even what we observe others do is such a huge part of that voice. Because that's stuff I've noticed with like how my parents reacted to certain things, certain people. And I never want to I don't know if my parents listen to this podcast. I'm always like, God, I hope they don't. I don't think they do. I know they listen to podcasts, but it's because my parents are amazing parents. I just have to throw that out there. But every single person has judgments that they place on other people, and your kids pick up on that. Your kids go, "Oh, well, if my mom thinks that about that person, then that means I need to not do that so I can earn her respect, her love, her trust, all the things." So it's interesting as I've grown up to be like, "Oh, I actually have this from this part of my parents." And I've started to be too like, it's not bad, it's not good, it is just there. And it's good to just observe it.
Yeah. So a technique is to externalize the critical thoughts. We've already dismantled them to give them less power. So we externalize the critical thoughts by writing them down in the second person. For example, instead of saying, I'm such a failure, try, you are a failure. Now, it may sound strange, but just this simple shift can help you see those thoughts from a more objective perspective.
Now, I'm curious when you do that, do you also do it so you can actually hear how mean you're being to yourself? Because it definitely changes when you hear it.
Yes, to dismantle it, you have to own a little bit of the power it has over you.
That makes sense. Because when I was first looking at that, and I listened to you do this call too with the Daymakers, this topic, and I was like, is that because like, why are we doing it that way? It's so mean to yourself. But I was like, that must be why. So you can really go, oh my God, I'm such a
Mm,
jerk to myself. I got to clean that up.
right. And the goal is just to get in a place of lack of judgment. Your judgment can be really dangerous, actually. And then we just want to try to own it so that we can do something about it. Again, a lot like help.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So once you've acknowledged the critical thoughts, I mean, you could do a brain dump, a daily brain dump to get it all out if you wanted to. So you want to turn on your inner nurturer. So imagine speaking to yourself with the same kindness and empathy that you would, like in your case, Sarah, your kids, your husband, in my case, my bestie, Piper, or like, what would you offer a friend in need?
Hmm.
And would you talk to your best friend the way that you talk to yourself?
Yep. I've heard that a lot.
I'm like my bestie's type person, vice versa.
Yeah. So be your own hype person, right?
Yeah, like I talked to her this morning and she was like, go be great, girl. And I was like, I'm gonna.
I love that. That is so cool.
So you just want to remind yourself that you're not defined by your mistakes or shortcomings. You are human, and that's enough.
I love that. Thank you for saying that because
Yeah,
it's something that I needed to hear right now.
I'm glad it resonated for you. I hope it does the listeners as well.
Yeah.
And people ask me all the time, like, but how do we tackle the incessant negative self talk? It plagues my mind. I love this. I love a statistic and a number. The average person has anywhere from 12,000 to 6,000 thoughts per day. But that's a lot. And
Yeah.
70% are negative.
That is so crazy.
Blows my mind.
I know.
Before we get into more on how we can work with our inner critic and our thoughts, Sarah, will you share about our book club in the Daymakers? I'm so excited about that.
I know. The book club is going awesome. So I know we talk a lot about our Daymakers community, and we would love for you to come check it out. We do a few different things in there to keep it an engaging community and to keep people growing on their alcohol free journey. Because me and Heather talk about that all the time. The people we want to be surrounded by are the people who want to grow in their life in all different areas. So one of the things we've started doing is a book club, and it's been a fun thing to just have a book of the month that we can listen to or read. You get to choose, and we just break it down by chapters. We're actually reading The Miracle Morning, and it's something that I read, gosh, a long time ago as a drinker. And now it's really cool to come back to it as a non-drinker and talk to people about my morning routine and how this is how I actually crafted it through this book. It's what inspired me to start my morning routine that now is a part of my life.
Yeah.
Before that, we did Beyond Booze with Sarah Rustbatch, who was just on our podcast in the last episode. And these books are just a cool way to keep us motivated in the group. So come check it out. Read the books with us, chat about them, and stay motivated to keep learning more, because I think sometimes I say, oh, I'm going to read, and I don't. But having a group of
Right.
people hold me accountable really helps me and helps me like digest the material too.
Yeah. Come on, y'all. Let's keep growing our knowing.
Yes.
So, our thoughts are deeply ingrained in our neural pathway. That doesn't mean that they're set in stone. If you think about like our existence doesn't exist in a vacuum, they're all filtered through our neural pathway. And we've learned that we can rewire our brain and create new, more empowering pathways.
Yes. I love that about the brain.
I think this is so applicable to when you quit drinking because, like I said earlier, there's so much shame, isolation, guilt. I'm actually leading a call Monday about guilt for the Daymakers, and there's just so much of that. So this is just an opportunity to help. So ask yourself, is this thought helpful? If it's not helpful, y'all, it's time for a reality check. And think to yourself, is this inspiring? Negative thinking can rarely lead to positive outcomes. It's just true. And like when you're trying to quit drinking, you need as much positivity. And I don't mean toxic positivity, but you need as much positive outcomes as you can get.
I have such a side story on that, but keep going. The toxic
'Cause
positivity.
it's like, ask yourself, is this thought necessary? Many of our thoughts are repetitive and unproductive.
Yeah.
And we know pain is productive. So why have unproductive pain?
Mm-hmm.
That don't make no sense to me. I mean, I do it myself, but when I studied all this, I was like, well, that's weird. And then you want to ask yourself, is this thought kind? Show yourself compassion and kindness that you deserve. And then lastly, is this thought true? You can challenge your own thoughts' validity.
I love that.
I just always tell people, like my friends or my clients or in the Daymakers, when you're communicating with another individual, is it kind, true, or necessary? So let's turn that to ourselves.
Yeah. I have got to write these down and just put them on the mirror where I brush my teeth so I can just start seeing it. My kids will see it. My husband will see it. I think it's such a positive way to live. And I hear you say it all the time, and I still haven't memorized it. So I'm like, oh, I need this because
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to put it on my bathroom.
I just think about it. I was like, hey, I was like, my kids need to know this too. And they don't listen to me. But maybe if I just have some sticky notes up, they'll see them and go, oh, that's my mom. She's so weird. But maybe they'll at least have it absorbing into their minds too. Because man, I was stuck last week in just a spiral of being depressed, angry, anxious. Like I looked at the thought wheel because somebody else posted it on the feelings wheel on Instagram. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, I needed this last week. But I looked at myself one day in the bathroom mirror and I was like, you don't have to feel like this. You can start feeling good. You get to choose how you're feeling. But it was really hard. Like it was almost like I was a toxic positivity person to myself at the time. Like I couldn't shift out of it. But I do think that reminding myself of that was helping. And just kind of saying, you don't have to feel like this. You don't have to have a shitty day today because you're choosing to be stuck in this spiral. You could choose to look at it a different way. And I kept being like, you could choose to look at this as an opportunity. And I was like, F that. You could choose to do it. But I think my brain still needed to hear that and just go, okay. And at one point I said, okay, yeah, maybe tomorrow. Like, give me this today and then maybe tomorrow. And slowly I came out of it. I feel like I'm maybe, like, safe to say maybe I'm out of it.
Sometimes it's okay to be toxic positive to yourself. And I think unless you have a major depressive disorder or major panic disorder or, some bipolar, really serious mental illness,
Mhm.
I think you can choose your attitude or, like you said, like maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And I never want to downplay to people who are really stuck in depression, ongoing anxiety. If it's ongoing, then please speak to a doctor and get the assistance that can really, really help you. But if you're like me and you just know you're having an off week, then try being a little toxic positivity to yourself, even though you won't want to
Yeah.
hear it. You will. The thing is, I always tell myself, like, you will hear it even when you don't want to hear it. Your subconscious is still trying to take it on.
Yeah. I tell a lot of my clients, like, it's okay to be mad at the tools. It's okay to be mad at the work. It's okay. Let's just push off from here. Every moment is its own life, and tomorrow's a brand new day.
I love that you actually tell people, like, it's okay. I always try to let people know, like, hey, I roll my eyes at it too sometimes.
Hmm. Me too. I roll my eyes at myself sometimes.
at
And
the ideas and tips you're offering. Ugh.
yeah, some days I'm like, oh gosh, I don't like this word. They call it live it to give it at the life coach training I went to. But some days I'm like, girl, you got to live it to give it to help other people. And
Yeah.
then some days I don't. And then I'm like, okay, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah. Maybe I like the maybe tomorrow.
Yep. So let's do a simple exercise. So we want to frame the negative thought. And what that would look like is, let's just say, I will always be confined by alcohol. Try to acknowledge that thought without judgment. Then you want to repeat the thought, adding the phrase, I am having the thought that I will always be confined by alcohol. Then notice any shifts in your body or emotion. By adding distance, you can start to detach from the negative thoughts grip. So if you do that a couple times, you'll want to, like, what did you know? Did you feel a sense of relief or clarity? And I want y'all to remember that thought work is an ongoing practice, and it takes time and it takes dedication. And you can quiet the inner critic and have a more compassionate and fulfilling life. Byron Katie has a fascinating story. She was bedbound from depression, history of suicidal ideation and maybe attempt, and this changed her life. And she created it. Because I think, like I said on my 3-year alcohol-free anniversary episode, but sometimes the pain has to be greater than staying the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Byron Katie is a good example of that.
I think it's really cool when you can see other people that you look up to and say, "Oh my gosh, they've done such amazing work in this area." And then to hear, "Oh, but they were struggling once too." Because I think when we are struggling, when we are having a really hard week, month, year, whatever it is, you really start to feel like I am the only one feeling like this. Like I'm so alone in this, but to find people who have been through it and say, okay, well, these are the things they did. Maybe I can actually try to start doing this. And our brains are powerful. I love the part in that exercise where it was replace the thought by adding the phrase, I am having the thought that, because we talk a lot about that thoughts aren't really always truth. So to even hear that, you can go, oh, it's just me having the thought. Like that means I can change the thought. That means I can think something different if I would like to. So instead of being like, I'm having the thought that I'm confined to a life of drinking, you can say, okay, well, I'm going to start having the thought to live a life that's free from alcohol.
That's a really great perspective, and it puts it in perspective of like the thought work, and that a lot of dialectical behavioral therapy is the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the opposite.
Yeah. The opposite action, opposite thought. It is. I always like that one because I'm like, oh, it's so simple. And then it
Yeah.
is kind of you're going to try it and you're going to roll your eyes at it though, but just do it and just do it over and over and over. And then those more positive thoughts start to actually become your more normal thoughts. They really, really do.
All right. So just in a really brief wrap up, don't believe everything you think. We talked about why the inner critic exists, what its goal is, and how to start course correcting your inner critic. and we talked about 2 examples. So share this with a friend, save it, and repeat these exercises as necessary. And we learned a lot about how many thoughts we have and the percentage that are negative. So just go back and listen if needed. Again, share with a friend. And I want to leave y'all with a quote today. I don't know who said it, so if anybody does, let us know. Peace is joy resting. Joy is peace dancing.
Thank you for that one.
Well,
that's a good one.
I love a quote. And the fact that I remember that without having to look at a Post-it note, it must have really spoke to my soul.
It's powerful. It's a powerful one if you're brand new to your alcohol-free journey too, because so many times we think we're bored, but we're just finally living a life of peace without that chaos of the drinking brain talking all the time.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to wrap this one up for you guys. Thank you so much for listening. And if you would not mind giving us a rating and following this podcast, it helps us so much. It's the easiest way to support our podcast, and it's totally free. So rate and review, and then be sure to check out the show notes for those links to the Daymakers and Heather's one-on-one coaching, and we will see you on the next podcast.
All right. Bye, y'all.